There is a moment in some stories where things just stop making sense. The characters feel off, the decisions don't line up, and you can feel it immediately, even if you can't explain why. A lot of the time, it's because the writer stopped following the story and started forcing it. When a writer tells the story the way they want to tell it and ignores their characters, that's where you get narratives that don't make sense and that jar the reader. And once you start noticing it, you see it everywhere. I remember watching Dexter and being surprised. Dexter, in the past, never leaves a blood trail, and then all of a sudden he leaves one.
My father protected me, taught me, kept me alive. And that's exactly what I'm going to do for my son.
Dexter is someone who doesn't feel emotions like everyone else. So it made perfect sense that when his sister Deb tried to kill him, he didn't understand it. He was angry about it.
Great. I'm so fucking happy for you.
But then when Harrison killed him, we're supposed to just accept that he suddenly understood it and accepted it.
You have to take the safety off. Just like I showed you. This is the only way out.
And not only that, they have him show real emotion in that moment. And that feels out of character because that's just not how he's been established. And it's not just that show. You see that same kind of thing happen in other stories too, like in Supernatural. Sam was originally trying to escape the hunting life into a normal one.
Dad's on a hunting trip, and he hasn't been home in a few days.
Jess, excuse us.
I mean, come on. You can't just break in middle of the night and expect me to hit the road with you.
You're not hearing me, Sammy. Dad's missing. I need you to help me find him.
You remember the poltergeist in Amherst? Or the Devil's Gates in Clifton? He was missing then, too. He's always missing, and he's always fine.
Not for this long. Are you gonna come with me or not?
I'm not.
Why not?
I swore I was done hunting. For good.
He wanted to become a lawyer and get married, and he was more righteous. And Dean was hardened, like a soldier, with some comedic relief. But then Sam changes due to circumstances.
You want to know why I've been lying to you, Dean? Because of crap like this.
Like what?
The way you talk to me, the way you look at me, like I'm a freak.
I do not.
You know, or even worse, like I'm an idiot, like I don't know the difference between right and wrong.
Do you know the difference, Sam?
You have no idea what I'm going through. None.
Then enlighten me.
I've got demon blood in me, Dean. And I'm just trying to take this curse and make something good out of it. Because I have to.
He becomes addicted to demon blood, allows demons to manipulate him, and releases Lucifer. Dean becomes more empathetic and starts looking after Sam when Sam goes rogue. Usually, Sam guided Dean to be virtuous, and then all of a sudden it's the other way around. And that's not something you usually see a lot in TV shows, but in this case, it might have made sense. Because in real life, people can go through traumatic circumstances, and their core can change. And by the end of the story, they both kind of return back to who they were once things calmed down. So sometimes, like in this case, it does work, but most of the time, it doesn't. And you see it even more clearly when you look at something like Voldemort. Voldemort's main goal was to become invincible and be the greatest dark wizard of all time. He feared death more than anything else. So I don't think he would have been as adventurous with Horcruxes the way they showed him.
Can you only split the soul once? For instance, 6 and 7.
7? Merlin's beard, Tom.
No one had really done that before him. I think he would have been afraid of splitting his soul that many times, afraid of whether it would weaken him too much or whether it would even work the way he expected. He also used his good looks to manipulate people when he was younger.
But in the books, he was the top employee at Borgin and Burke's. He was charming, polite, and knew how to manipulate high-value clients. He targeted Hepzibah Smith, a wealthy collector, and killed her to acquire Hufflepuff's cup and Slytherin's locket.
That was one of his main tools that he used, so giving that up for something that risks his life doesn't really add up for me. There are also moments where he assumes he would feel it if one of his Horcruxes were destroyed. But for a character like that, I would expect him to be absolutely sure, do his research and everything, and not just assume that. And then you get into the cursed child. They have him have a child in that story, and I don't think that fits his character either. Because if his main goal is power and immortality, a child could be seen as competition, or something he can't fully control. People have children because they want to carry on a bloodline. So in that sense, you could argue that it fits. Maybe he was desperate enough to continue Slytherin's line, but at the same time, that idea is very sentimental. And Voldemort is not a sentimental character. If anything, it seems more in line with him to want to be the last remaining descendant of Salazar Slytherin, because that would elevate him even more. And honestly, Cursed Child has a lot of moments like that. Cedric Diggory becomes a Death Eater because he didn't win the tournament. But Cedric was originally fair and honorable.
Cedric eventually saw the snitch and was pelting up the field. Harry saw Cedric going after it and followed, but as he was racing towards Cedric and the snitch, they were being surrounded by over 100 Dementors, and Harry collapsed off his broomstick. Cedric caught the snitch seconds after that. He later said that he didn't realize what had happened until he already caught the snitch. When he looked back and saw Harry on the ground, he tried to call it off, and he wanted a rematch. But the whole Gryffindor team said that they had won fair and square, and that even if the Dementors weren't there, he would have caught the snitch before Harry. Cedric was the first Seeker to ever outplay Harry.
That was his core identity.
Cedric called after Harry. He told Harry that he owed him one for telling him about the dragons, and he gave Harry a clue about opening the egg.
You know the prefect's bathroom on the 5th floor? It's not a bad place for a bath. Just take your egg and mull things over in the hot water.
And then all of a sudden turning him into a Death Eater completely changed who he is. And it felt forced. There's also the situation with Harry and Albus. At the end of the original story, Harry tells Albus that it doesn't matter what house he's sorted into, even Slytherin.
Dad, what if I am put in Slytherin?
Albus Severus Potter. You were named after 2 headmasters of Hogwarts. One of them was a Slytherin, and he was the bravest man I've ever known.
But just say that I am.
Then Slytherin House will have gained a wonderful young wizard.
But in Cursed Child, his attitude feels different. He comes across as more rigid and more concerned with how things turn out, and that feels like a shift from who he was before. And then there are scenes where Hermione is cooperating with Snape, and Snape is actually polite. In the original books, there's not really a moment where Snape is polite to Harry, Ron, or Hermione. So seeing that kind of interaction felt really off. And I think that's one of the main reasons why Cursed Child didn't land in the same way as the original series. It feels like the characters are being pushed into a story that doesn't really fit them, instead of the story following who they are. And this isn't just something I've noticed in other stories. I ran into this in my own writing too. I tried to make a character a villain based on fairy tale witches. That was the vision I had, but when I actually started writing her, that's not who she was. She became something completely different than what I planned. And I realized I was trying to force something that didn't fit. And I had another character who was supposed to just be a villain sidekick. But the more I wrote him, the more I realized he didn't want to be that. And if I forced him into that role, he would just be a less interesting version of the villain. So I had to let that go too. And that reminded me of something I've noticed in other stories, like in The Lord of the Rings. You have characters like Saruman with someone like Wormtongue around. And I always felt like characters like Wormtongue can sometimes feel uninteresting, not because sidekicks are bad, but because sometimes they don't really serve a strong purpose and just end up being a weaker version of the main character. And that's when I realized if I forced my character back into the role I originally planned for him, the story would be worse. And when you step back and look at all of this, it's really the exact same problem. The character stops behaving like themselves because the writer is forcing the story instead of following their characters. And I think that's why a lot of writers feel like they need to force their vision because they're working off structures that worked in the past. But that doesn't necessarily fit the structure of the story they're actually writing. And that's when things start to break. When a writer tells the story the way they want to tell it and ignores their characters, that's when things stop making sense and start to feel off. Stories work when you follow the characters, and they break when you try to control them.